All right. It is 6:02 p.m., October 5th. I'm a call to order the October 5th Airport Commission. First item on the agenda is roll call. Claudia, please. Yeah, I'm here.
Here.
Present.
Here.
Present.
Here.
Here.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is general public comment. Dan, do we have any? Do not have any comment cards this time. All right, so no comment cards. So we'll move on to the next item, and presentations. Doesn't look like we have any presentations. We will move on to the next item, the approval of minutes from our September 7th, 2023 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review? Does anyone have any changes? Any commissioners' changes? No? Okay. With that, we will deem the minutes approved. Next item on the agenda is public hearing and matters for consideration. And the first item under there is committee comment. And the first item is from our city council update. Councilwoman?
Well, I'm happy to let you know that we heard, as the city council, from staff, a trestle update, if you know anything about the trestle down in the waterfront area, in the downtown area. So we got a presentation, and staff is working very hard on grant writing and finding matching funds. So when you get a grant, you have to match the funds. So we passed the mobile home senior overlay, and this protects the tenants in those senior mobile home parks. We also heard from the city staff about the fairgrounds and the tenants, and they got a 3 to 5 lease extension, and that was voted on by the council. And so they're locked in, those 9 tenants that are currently renting on the fairgrounds now. So that's good news. Yeah. We've been very busy.
Good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda is the ad hoc subcommittee reports. And let's see, so in no particular order that I have written down here, so we'll start with hangar rates. And I believe that is Tom and Nancy, or Tom is the chair.
Yes, lucky me. Nancy and I met for coffee on Monday and went through a lot of what we'd like to do, next steps on looking at rates and charges, and part of that is hangar waiting list. One of the big issues is demand for hangars and tie-down spots. You know, the south ramp rehabilitation is completed, and the aircraft, the few that were there, are back, and it looks great, but there are only a few. And so one of the objectives we have is to look at what is it that governs demand for tie-down and/or hangar waiting list spots. And since the ramp is open, probably not a lot of people there waiting on the ramp to go into a hangar. I know our list is not terribly long, but we need to really understand the demand and what's driving it, because there are other airports that have a huge waiting list for hangars. And in some cases, according to former Commissioner Rick Dusty, a waiting list for tie-down spots up in Auburn. So there are a lot of issues involved, sometimes unique to a specific airport location. So we need to get into that and understand that better. We've got a meeting set up with Manager Dan next week, and we'll be looking at trying to gather data to better understand sort of the business climate and the sort of the context of where we are now. We think we know, but just trying to go out and do something arbitrarily might not help our case. So we need to really fully understand that. So that's where we intend to go on that. I think that's it, unless you have anything to add, Hans.
No,
Okay.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions? I'm curious what the occupancy rate, if that is.
On the hangars?
On the, just locally, I mean, I guess NOS is not really a comparison, but say up Santa Rosa.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers directly at hand. I've got a stack of data here. I'd have to go through it. But in most cases, the airports that we've gotten data from, largely that they have available online, and one of the things we want to do is touch base with either airport representatives or airport managers at some of the local airports around in the Bay Area and find out what's driving their demand for hangars and how are they doing. In most cases, the hangars at surrounding airports are fairly well occupied, fairly full. One airport a few years ago, San Martin, built a whole bunch of hangars and they sat empty for years, which is not a good expenditure of funds, but regardless. So we want to make sure we don't do that going forward. So we need to better understand that, but in most cases, most airports, at least in our area, the hangars, for the most part, full, moderate to small waiting list. And again, that gets into the, we really need to understand what's going on and what the marketplace is like. Okay, so, yeah.
Thank you, Tom. If there are no more comments, we'll move on. The next ad hoc committee I have on my list is the hangar policy, which is Commissioner Domich.
There we go. So we haven't had any update on the waitlist policy. I did have some questions for Dan, just in the airport manager meeting, just to get an update on the climate. And to Tom's point, one of the things that we were looking at before we really moved this forward, obviously the climate's sort of changed since we started this. At one point, there was kind of, an extensive list of active people on the hangar wait list. And at this point, it seems like there are some open T hangars. So to have, a few open so that they're available when someone wants one is not necessarily a bad thing. So maybe we can get an update on that. But also just going back to what Commissioner McGaugh was working on is understanding what the demand truly is for hangars. If we're going to talk about building additional hangars in the future, having a waiting list of 60 people and getting excited about building new hangar rows and then coming to find out that we can't fill them would obviously not be the best use of funds. So if we can get an update that in the manager's report, then we can maybe have an update for the next meeting.
Any questions from any of the other commissioners? Okay, with that, we'll move on. The next ad hoc committee I have on the list is airport access, which is once again Commissioner Domich and myself.
Yeah, so
You're off.
it's on now. So Marcus and I had a phone conversation with Mr. Milne and discussed the updates to the access policy. He was happy to see that there was at least a process now to request access. So that was good. I think we can all appreciate that there's an actual written policy and process now. One of the things we were talking about was kind of the draft of how that's going to work and just some of the requirements. Obviously, we want to reduce the amount of workload that's on staff to process these requests. So one of the things that we had talked about just as kind of a trial period, obviously, some of these things can be changed, but right now it looks like there were several things that were listed regarding access request types, licensed, unlicensed aircraft, banner tow, et cetera. And there's currently, looks like, a limit of 2 calendar days per week only for unlicensed aircraft. So could you elaborate on that a little bit to where that came from?
Sure. Yeah, is it possible to hold my comments till the report because it's in there? But I can. I'd be happy to address that part alone.
Yeah, I guess, let's see. Yeah, I guess we can discuss it at that point. I mean, the update is we did meet with Mr. Milne and discuss this, and there were some comments, so I can save them for that time if that's better.
Dan, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. You'd like
I
to?
do have this in the manager report. And
Okay.
I was going to kind of go through the reasoning behind the form
Okay.
and the sort of open-ended, it's not set in concrete, so we are open to suggestions that help improve the process. But yeah, I'd be happy to discuss all those.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. No
It's
worries.
a little hard of hearing. Thank you. Is that it, Jeff?
Yeah, that's all.
Does anyone have any questions? Oh, I'd just like to add, Dan, I appreciate what you did putting that web together. That's, and then you've given a turnaround where you've given the 2 business days and been very clear with that, what it is. So I commend you and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's a great step. If nobody has any questions, we will move to the final ad hoc committee, and I believe that is the procedures.
So I appreciate Councilmember Now making some connections and Dan providing information. As you were aware, it's a lot of information. So we have that material to review, and we'll be trying to find a time to sit down and talk amongst ourselves in the coming weeks, and then we'll bring back any questions that we have to Dan and to the city. So we're started.
It's not an easy process.
No, but I appreciate the information.
Layers.
And yeah, we're slogging through, so we'll get there.
Okay, thank you. Does any commissioners have questions, comments? Okay. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is staff comment, and that is the airport manager's report. Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Just want to get the financial out of the way here. We're tracking very well to the end of August, showing revenues of $344,000 and expenditures of $183,000. As just a reminder, as we go through the fiscal year, we tend to build up a bit of a revenue reserve, and once we hit November, we make a big payment, approximately $450,000 to $500,000 in principal and interest for the 2004 hangar project. So we're tracking really well for that. We do have some extra expenditures this year that we haven't kind of factored in yet. We're working on as far as the hangar door repair. That's something that we hadn't really budgeted for, so we're gonna have to kind of show that at some point. So we will probably be a little bit over. We could be a little bit over expenditures over revenue this year, as we need to dip into that to make this repair. We have ordered we've sent the request to send payment for the door, and we're negotiating with some contractors to see what best rates we can get as far as installation. Any questions about the finances so far early in the fiscal year here before we move on? All right.
One
Yes.
question, and I guess I have 2. Did we have the final 2023 numbers on the last one?
We did. I can publish them one more time, but it looks like we were pretty close. We were within, I think, about $20,000,
Okay.
slightly over revenue over expenditure, and that's the operation budget. Obviously, we did dip into the reserve fund for some of the construction work that we did. We haven't figured out the numbers yet. We still have one more payment to make. Last payment. It's going before council next Monday. This coming Monday, I think, to my knowledge, and that would be the last payment for the ramp reconstruction project. At this time, it looks like that project is going to cost the fund about $180,000. So less than we thought. But somewhere between 150 and 180. We don't have the final numbers yet. We still haven't taken our last payment from the FA funds that have been allocated. So, but overall, for what we were able to accomplish, we did quite well in 2023.
Okay. And then the other question is, you said the payment has been sent so the hangar door has been ordered.
We've requested the payment to be sent. Hopefully, within a couple weeks, that check will be sent to the manufacturer. They'll send out the door. From there, we have to figure out who's going to install it. We have 2 contractors that are interested at this time. We only had 1 at one point, so the second one wants more information, but we're not sure if this is going to be sole source or if there actually is going to be potentially a bid for this yet. But as far as the purchase, we've just made that purchase.
What's the turnaround time on the actual manufacturing and then delivery of the door?
It could be up to 6 months.
6
They
months.
said you were going to have to wait because I guess supplies, their lack of labor to make these doors. But I think it's mostly the supplies that they're relying on, the steel and other things they're having a hard time getting on time.
Do you think we'll be in a position that once the door is delivered, if we're looking at 6 months with the two potential installation companies, that we'll have one chosen, identified, so that they will be able to, as soon as the door arrives, then get it done? Or is it, you think there's going to be an additional delay?
That's the intent. The hope,
Okay.
the hope is we would already be lined up. We do want to get in a contract with them early.
Okay,
We're also looking for a long-term contract for door maintenance. It's something that we've really struggled to get. Same with Fuel Farm, a bunch of other things that we want to get in place that we haven't had traditionally. We just kind of done it as, you know, as things came up. We'd like to have a 5-year contract with these companies to be able to do these things and already have them under contract so we don't have to wait.
Okay.
That's the goal, which it speaks to the purchasing ad hoc. That's one of the things that, you know, that we'd like to see improve to lower the time from an issue to the final repair.
okay. Thank you.
Does the manufacturer of the door have a preferred installer or an installation team?
We asked because we said, now there some door manufacturers will do the install too. There was a competitor door, much higher price. They would install it. We did ask the door manufacturer we went to, the exact same door that was in there, same model, everything else. We were replacing one for one, and they have worked with some of the local companies, but they don't have necessarily a preferred one. They just have contacts, unfortunately.
So
They don't have one or anybody that they can just say, hey, we recommend this one company. They won't do it themselves, no. Yeah. Anything else? We'll just go into operations. So just getting to the first question that Commissioner Dubnik asked about the hangar demand. So yes, you're looking for, you know, what is the current number of hangars that are available, or okay.
What hangars are available? You know, what, have you had any calls from people to add to the wait list, inquiries? Just what the climate is out there to kind of see, you know, do you foresee increasing demand or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I would say we get about 1 to 2 calls per week, call or email, just inquiring if we have anything. And then we're getting to the point where we have a few folks that have been on the waiting list who had, you know, don't call me back until this date. There's a few of those that will probably be working through the list again. Right now, we only have 2 hangars that are available. There are not the same 2 necessarily that we had last meeting. So we've been kind of cycling through them, but we seem to be having at least 2 to 3 at any given time, which is great as far as folks that just want to walk in the door and grab a hanger. But obviously, we want to see more demand and a more robust waiting list with serious buyers. A lot of our inquiries are coming from folks that have had an aircraft previously and don't have an aircraft right this moment, or have never had an aircraft before. So whereas a lot of, I think, our waiting lists were folks that were moving from a different area, or they wanted to relocate a little bit closer to their house, the demand tends to be folks that are buying aircraft for the first time. So that's a little bit of a change. That poses a little bit of an issue when it comes to being able to allocate them a hangar, because our policy has been you either have to have an aircraft, you have to be in contract with an aircraft broker or somebody that's going to help them find an aircraft, or be under contract for an aircraft, or some sort of legal document saying, hey, I either own or am trying to get an aircraft in a short amount of period of time for us to hold a hangar for them. It just doesn't, it's hard for us to justify otherwise. So that keeps coming up where someone wants an aircraft, they're not even sure sometimes of which model. They're that flexible. They kind of know what they want, but they're not sure. And we keep getting these inquiries. So that seems to be the bulk of the demand that's not internal. A few of our tenants are taking on second aircraft. And then some of our tenants are reducing, and ones that have 2 hangars are giving one up. So it's kind of, the demand is a little all over the place, but I would say we don't have the robust demand that we had 18 months ago or 2 years ago, where we kind of saw the peak, where there was a lot. We still see heavy demand for large hangars. I get that request all the time. We had someone with a twin the other day where we have a 41-foot hangar, and normally you could fit a small twin, a Baron or something into it, but this one was like 11.6. I think our door is right around 12. Like, it's sometimes the hangars are just a little bit too small for what the demand is. So as far as large hangars, I don't have any doubt that had we, if we were able to build a dozen, they would all be filled. The T hangars, I think the demand is definitely softened for the smaller T hangars.
Just real quick, when you say large hangars, are you talking 50 by 50 type size?
Starting at right around 50-foot opening, so like a 2,000 square foot hangar. that
Light
size.
twin, small turbine type aircraft?
Yes.
That's good to know.
So that's where we see things right now. That could change. Obviously, it's seasonal based on what tax season we're in and where the economy is. But that seems to be where we're at right now, where we do have a trickle of folks that are getting into aircraft ownership for the first time. And we're more than happy to connect up with a hangar. And that demand seems to be meeting pretty closely to I would say, group of mid-70s to 80s tenants who are now moving out from aircraft ownership. And some of them are going to rent, some of them are giving it up completely, but that seems to be the trend. And those two, new aircraft ownership and folks that are giving up hangars, is meeting about the same.
Okay. And then just out of curiosity, about how many people would you say have officially been added to the waiting list in the last 3 months?
I think we have, we've had about, I would say 3 in the last 3 months, something like that. So it's averaging about one a month.
3 a month or 1 a month?
I think it's about one a month. The
a month.
admin can confirm. Is it about every other month we're getting a new wait list, or? Are we getting a one wait list request or a new deposit for a hangar wait list about once a month, or is it kind of every other month maybe, or once a month? So we're average about one a month, I would say, for new people on the list.
So Dan, if somebody is in the process of looking for an aircraft to purchase, may not be under contract yet, do they typically put their names on the waiting list, or are they just looking for an open hangar they can scoot into?
Most, I would say, the majority of the hangars that we put into contract over the last 3 months have been essentially walk-ins. We've gone through the list, we've offered to everyone, but I would say most of them are walk-ins.
Okay.
We had one tenant that was looking for a larger hangar. They changed their mind. They went for a smaller aircraft. We were able to get them a hangar, an additional hangar. So that, yeah, we're seeing, at least recently, it's been a lot of completely new tenants to the airport.
Okay, so somebody that may be on the waiting list, they're probably not going to be on the list for very long, given the turnover in hangars, is what it sounds like you're saying.
Except that I guess most of the people on the waiting list are just not ready. I guess that would be the category I put them in.
Okay.
They want to, but they're not ready.
Okay, thank you.
So if you had to guess, how many people would you say are on the waiting list that would be ready to move into a hangar if one came available? You said we had 2 that are currently open. Are those someone waiting for a 41, or?
I would say half are looking for large. The other half are looking for something. I guess the other half, or half of those, the quarter of those, are looking for, they're still looking for their aircraft. They don't even know, they're not even sure what they're buying. but they don't have an aircraft currently. And then the other half of those, I think, are just, either they're just not in the right place that they can take that hangar.
So it sounds like our supply and demand is sort of in equilibrium at the moment, right?
It's
I
pretty
mean, we
close.
have
I would say it's
some
pretty close.
Shuffle out as others come in, so we're sort of right there, despite the fact that we have people interested on the waiting list. But as far as someone who would be ready to move in tomorrow, sounds like all those people are able to be accommodated if they're willing to take any T hangar.
Yes, I believe there are more non-tenants that want hangars. We've never advertised, so there is a possibility that there's a good 5% out there of, I guess, of our total hangar occupancy. There's probably a 5% that are not tenants that would be interested. It's just a matter of how much our effort and expense are we going to put out to try to get those tenants. Thankfully, most of them will call. Mm-hmm. It is posted on the website, the actual hangars, the sizes. So that's something. But were we to advertise that at some point, say we got half a dozen hangars, or even a dozen, God forbid, if we had a dozen hangars available, we'd probably look at putting an advertisement out for that, because somewhere in the Bay Area, someone's looking for a hangar. Even if it's not a convenient location for them, they may be desperate for something and they're willing to put somewhere that's not the most convenient.
Yeah, I think putting the open hangars on the website was definitely a step in the right direction, just because the consensus that I've heard from other people at other airports, they've just thought that Petaluma's had a waiting list that's years long. And a lot of people have no idea that, things have changed a little bit. So having that out there, hopefully if one person can see it, can get the word out. So glad to see that at least we're able to accommodate those that are ready to go.
Any other questions about hangars before we move on to the fee study? So really good news. The finance department has hired a consultant to help us, several different departments in the city, work on a fee study and try to develop either removing fees that are no longer applicable, adding fees as needed, and the actual rates. So the bigger part of this is looking at all rates. I don't know how many departments are affected by this, but the airport and marina are one. And so we are looking at the airport fees. In about a week and a half, I'm going to be submitting kind of recommendations from my department on what we'd like to see, some of the changes that have been asked by the commission previously. And I just wanted to go over to, we published it with this agenda just as kind of a worksheet. This is not official proposal. This is just the sort of the worksheet we're using to try to look at where our fees are right now, some changes that we'd like to make to them based on the comments we've received from tenants, from the commission, from visitors. And one of the biggest changes that we'd like to propose as part of this process is to change the way that we look at rates. So as you're aware, we talked about this several months ago with the rate change July 1st. The rate change is based on a square footage rate. For example, the older T hangars are currently 47 cents per square foot. We talked about how that is difficult to adjust 2, 3, 4, 5% when we do our adjustments every year, just because we get into the micro decimal 9, I think 8 or 9 place decimal changes, which just doesn't, is very hard to make accurate. And so it's very hard for us to make rate changes that are to the exact percentage of the rate change across the city for all fees. So the recommendation, and right now there is no objection from the finance department, we'd like to move those to based on a set square footage, just like the rate is, there would be a total amount. So for instance, for hangar 01, 1A, it's in the same category as 4A, 6A, 6K, 7A, et cetera. That would be $4.80 per month. That's the rate. That's what everyone's paying right now. We would print that rate instead of the 47 cents per square foot. When we went to change the rates, say rates go up 1.3% or something in July 1st, we would change that, the $485.04, based on that rate, not the 47 cents per square foot, and then do the math on what each hangar tenant was going to pay. So this is based on the comments we received from a lot of tenants that were upset by what they saw was inaccurate changes in the fees. As we explained, over a course of 2 to 3 years, usually all the rates work out to the same CPI increases that we would normally see. But we feel that this is a better way to do it. It's more accurate. It's more straightforward. People can just look and see what people are actually paying and not a square footage, which is kind of it's a bit of a disconnect from the final rate that people will pay. So that's one recommendation. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I just one thought, and if there's any opportunity that perhaps Nancy and I could touch base with the people that have been contracted to do this study, it might be helpful. Based on my generations of experience on the commission here, I recall years back where the city did a rate and fee study, and the company that was retained to do the study made assumptions about the airport and the use of the airport property in terms of hangar and tie-down rents and all of that, that were, let's just say, inappropriate and not relevant to an airport. And as a consequence, they recommended increases based on light industrial activity as opposed to aircraft hangars, a big garage. And the folks involved had no concept of what that meant. And so we had a pretty good kick up in rents there for a little bit, and I think that got moderated. But still, we just want to make sure that whoever is involved in doing this understands the context of what they're dealing with. And, bless their hearts, they just maybe have never had an experience with an airport before or a marina. And we just don't want to get them off in the wrong track of trying to compare apples to peanuts. It just doesn't work. So, and we do have the requirement to be, with our rates and fee structure, competitive with our nearby surrounding airports, because essentially this is a nonprofit business we're running, an enterprise. It's not like, the water department or the bus transit system, bless their hearts. I know they work hard and they do well, but still the airport, we need to support ourselves, and we don't want to be in a place where we end up pricing ourselves to an uncompetitive position and lose tenants on that. So if there's any chance that we could at least touch base, or if you could check with that group and see if they have an experience with hangars and marinas, or with airports and marinas, just to see if they understand what they're dealing with.
Yeah, to my understanding, the consultant has worked with us prior to this. They did the last fee study. But I will see if they're open to, we'll see if the finance department is open to having a little bit of commissioner a comment along with that. I will say that as far as like hangar fees and tie downs, most likely that is going to be, the biggest factor there will be the market rate. Now, other fees that, for instance, on here we have a few that we throw on there just in case we ever need them. Airport staff support, that's going to be based on the fees, or based on the rate that employee is pretty much our highest employee that would serve in that capacity for that fee. That's based on their salary, hour's salary. Same would be true for a few other things. Some of the fees are based on staff time. Other ones would be based on just the market rate. So, but they're going to be looking at all that, and they're very good at it.
So that would be time expended by staff above and beyond the allocation that we already pay for?
This would be based on a specific kind of activity. So for instance, if there's a film crew, right? They get a film permit with the police department, but we may have to add another fee depending on what has been promised.
Okay.
We may have to provide staff for that. Therefore, other fees need to be.
Beyond
that kind of
typical administration and
Yes.
management oversight. Okay, thank you.
So does that make sense? So, and just, and when I'm going to show you where we're we're trying to pull as much data as possible. So we're pulling from obviously Sonoma County Airport, Nut Tree, Contra Costa, Napa, several others, Auburn, as many as airports in the area that we can. We're trying to pull their rates. Now, there's some airports that are just low, and I don't know that we're ever going to price match them. I don't know why the rates are so low, but there are some things that we may need to adjust lower. There may be some that need to go up. One area that we're kind of going to, I'm recommending that we may look at to reduce would be the tie down fees. Our tie down is pretty high in comparison to a lot of other airports. I think the average across all of them, if you don't throw in some of the more premium airports like Truckee, tend to be more in a $60 to $65 per month for a tie down. We're at 72. So that's part of what looking at this, is Truckee inaccurate? Are they an outlier? Do they even need to be an average? So we're trying to average out, kind of look at that, see which ones are kind of outliers. But that's one area we probably could reduce is the tie down fee if we're not being competitive in that area. So that's one. We're probably looking more at $60, $65 would be more closer to what other airports are charging. Now, I think our tenants get a lot, our tie down tenants get a lot for that 72, but that might be just a little high. That could help bring in some more. I don't know. I've only gotten a couple comments over the years about tie downs being too much. Usually it's more of a disinterest in tie downs, not a price issue. Another area that we need to increase, though, is the overnight fees. Routine, if we look across a lot of the airports, the average across the Bay Area is about $10 a night. We're charging $7. Now, that's not a big deal. We're not talking about a lot of money there, but it's an area where we can increase. I think we can also we might be able to increase some of the other aircraft, like the jet aircraft. That was one that I think former Commissioner Dusty had looked at, where we don't charge very much for turbine aircraft, jets that stay overnight. We're only charging, I think, $13 right now a night, which is pretty low. And we almost get laughs from some of the flight crews. So that's one where I think we really need to increase that. It's just most of these companies have no issue paying more. It doesn't affect our tenants. It's just another way to add revenue, pay our staff. So those are a couple of the areas that we're looking at. One of the big changes I'm proposing is we break apart the way we do overnight fees. Right now, we just have essentially a single engine and a twin jet. Those are the two categories. So like a lot of airports, we're going to try to break those out. So we have single engine piston, twin engine piston, which is very close in fees. I think it's only $8 difference, for where those two would be. And then you have the jump to jet, which would be a bit more. Each hop is about 1.5 times the previous one. So anyway, that's just one area where I think we need to differentiate turbine aircraft from smaller piston twin. We're trying not to add unnecessary fees for folks that just want to fly in for the weekend, have some fun. They're not doing business. They're just having a good time. They have no problem, paying $10, $15 a night. It's not a big deal. But for a charter or something where a much higher fee at $22 or higher would not even be, they wouldn't even have any issue with that. We're trying to collect that. So anyway, any questions about that so far? Try not to spend too much time on this, but I just wanted to explain what we're trying to do here. I'm more than happy to take any suggestions on, maybe fees that I didn't even have listed here. But one thing a couple of them are just kind of housekeeping things. We've never shown our keys or card deposit. We don't do a deposit for keys currently, but we do for gate cards. And we're also doing this with the marina too. We don't have those listed. We want to have everything we possibly could charge. We want to have it listed on this sheet. So that is part of the goal of this process. So we've added a couple of those. The biggest one on here, and we had a rental car thing on there. I don't know if we're ever going to do the rental car, have rental cars available that we hold for customers, but that's something we want the option to at some point. Most airports do 10% of the contract. Seems reasonable. We've offered some other options to rental car companies, putting a drop box in the terminal, things like that. But there's just a few things here that we'd like to add on in case we ever need to use them. The biggest one that we really need is we need a commercial use fee on our rates and charges in case we have a company that needs to set up on the airport somewhere at some point. And we also need one that's specifically for aircraft maintenance. It's something that we have, we already have it as a published charge on our forms, but something we want to solidify with our rate schedule. If we're going to be charging it, we need to have it on here. Right now, if a company wants to come on the airfield and do maintenance in a city-owned hangar, we charge essentially 1/30th, 1 day, of a minimum commercial-sized hangar rent. Right now, that's about $70. $70 is 1/30th of. Now we tack on a little extra for the taxes that they would normally pay as a tenant, so it's $2. So out the door, without any other admin fees, it's $72 a day. We have added a admin fee to some of our forms to help process the paperwork and the access codes to be able to get on the airfield. So far, no one has taken us up on this. I haven't had any complaints from any of the maintenance operators about this form when we've given it to them. But that's something that we'd like to have in place so that if somebody wants to come on the airfield, there is a way to do it. It is not free. You don't get to use a city hangar for your maintenance to maintain an aircraft that you don't own, that you were doing for a client without paying a compensatory fee. Because it's not fair to the 3 companies that are on the field that are doing maintenance work and or avionics. So that's something we need to get in place, and so we'd like to add that on. Part of this process will be looking at my recommendations and make sure that those are fair, to make sure they do fit the type of work. But we want to have that as a specific fee for that kind of work based on some of the issues we've had in the past. There is also a general one that covers a lot of other things, but because of the nature of maintenance work and some of the areas of liability, we wanted to have a special set fee for that, like a lot of other airports do. Any questions on that? That's pretty much all I have about fees. I don't know if you had time to review this. I know it's a huge chart. We're zoomed way in on it, but if there was any fees that we didn't have on here or any fees that needed more clarification, this is mostly what we'll be submitting as part of our process of reviewing fees, and hopefully through this process we'll have a much more accurate understanding of the market rate for a lot of these things, and then also making sure that we are publishing every possible fee that could come up.
I have one question.
Sure.
On the commercial use fees, it looks like you've got a comp for Napa.
Yep.
Was that 500? Is that a monthly fee?
It's a minimum fee.
That's a
And
minimum.
this is part of the
Okay.
challenge is almost every airport handles these fees differently. So some have a set fee, some have a minimum fee, some of them have a fee that lasts for 30 days. I think there was one airport down south that had one for, it was something like 5,000, but it was up to 60 days or something. Every airport is different. But the challenge has been to, as we've gone through this process and we've been challenged by outside entities, is to show that we're not the only one that needs to charge fees. There's a lot of airports across California that do charge fees. The issue is that they all do it differently. So there isn't a easy fee. I don't think anybody has approached it the way we have. The way that they approach it often is a big, heavy fee, but you get more time. I don't like that because it tends to exclude more services. If you have to pay $500 up front for 1 day of work or 2 days of work, that doesn't really work. But also, it doesn't make sense to throw down $500 and have access for the whole month either. So it's more work, but I think if we were able to get a fee that was really based on what do we charge for commercial hangars? What is a reasonable fraction of that someone could expect to pay? I think it's a much better way of going about it. It's just harder. It's a harder process. So we'll see what kind of feedback we get from that. There are no other things about the fee study. We'll move on to the temporary access request web form. That's all the rage. So we've received, just right up the top, we've received 6 requests over the last week. To be honest, like 4 days. We don't get a lot of these requests in general. We get about, I think we've only been dealing with 8 or 9 different individuals that have requested access over the last 6 months. So just to put this in perspective, we don't get a lot of requests. The 6 individuals that put those requests in over the last 4 days are all the same people, like, other than one, I think. One was new. So just to put that, just so we were the same understanding, this is not a massive demand that we weren't filling. We've responded to almost everyone that I know has requested something over time with our email. The problem with email, though, is the requests we get, we don't even get the person's full name sometimes. We just get a first name, or the dates aren't as easy. We have to ask for clarification. We don't know a lot about these people that are giving requests. So part of the purpose of this form was to capture not only the unlicensed aircraft requests we were getting, with providing us with more information about them, but also to capture some of the things that we've kind of had floating out there for a while. We get banner tow operators. We have a couple banner tow operators that operate out of the airport occasionally, maybe once a month or once every other month. There are some random requests we do get. So the thought was, well, while we're trying to make a better conduit for the unlicensed aircraft, why don't we try to capture everything that's non-tenant? And that was the purpose of this form. So for tenants, call us up, shoot us an email, text me. We're very informal when it comes to tenants requesting codes for various reasons. We don't get a lot of requests for those, but sometimes tenants need extra access for their guests or for deliveries or whatnot. But for non-tenants, that's why we set this up. It's all non-tenant based. I know the category headings probably need a little bit of development. This came together very quickly. I'm definitely open to any suggestions. You can make them now or send me an email. But we do get requests from in advance, sometimes from jet charter companies. We get requests from just someone flying in for the weekend, want to leave their airplane, but they need a code in advance. We want to make sure that all of those were captured. So that was the idea behind the form, is capture them now. They are conditional. So depending on what category you select, changes the form. One of the biggest changes is that, as one of the commissioners already mentioned, we do limit unlicensed aircraft to 2 requests basically per week. You can't make more than one request, but you can only request 2 days out of a calendar week for access. So we're not going to give you 7 days a week. We're going to give you two days out of the week. Now, that provides quite a bit of access, because we've never received, other than one individual, we've never received a request for more than 3 days. Sometimes people want Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Or typically we get either a Friday, Saturday or a Saturday, Sunday request, 2 days of access. So based on demand, that's why we went with the 2 days. More than that, it starts to put us in the position of, this person's no longer a temporary user. This is a permanent user. Somebody is here several days a week, every week. It puts them in a different category, and I think puts us in a situation where we are taking on more liability than we need to. So this seemed like a reasonable limit based on the demand we normally get. And the normal demand we get is 1 to 2 days per calendar week, and often we don't get a request from the same individual more than once a month or once every 3 months. So we don't get a lot of demand on this. So this seemed like a great limit to make sure that we're trying to get as much access as possible for people that needed access without unduly limiting them, but also not giving them more access than they needed. And potentially putting the city and our tenants, in taking on more liability than we need to. So that was the reasoning behind that. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I've got one, Dan. Given the multitude of different types of temporary users of the airport and wanting access, if someone was to come in for a day, do aerial survey or banner tow or whatever, where is the city policy that defines, should an incident occur, what insurance coverage would take hold and the like? Because I know if you're a full-time tenant, obviously we need a certificate of insurance copy with the city for liability. But if these are temporary people, how does that work?
In almost every case, if it's something like a survey, they are at the airport for more than a day. They're going to be at the airport for 2, 3, as many, a couple of weeks. In almost every instance, we get an insurance certificate from them for $1 million. That's been what we tend to get. Now, if their activity rises to some other level and there's more risk, we'd probably ask for more. But in general, having an aircraft at the airport for that amount of time, operating out of the airport, we usually ask for. We have 2 that I can think of just off the top of my head. We have 2 operators that were in that position. One was doing a contract for PG&E, doing replacement for high power lines. We got a certificate from them. They also bought a lot of fuel from the airport. And then another one was doing aerial survey, doing a test in Petaluma to then go up north, I want to say Alaska or Canada, to then do that for
If they're just there for a day?
Yep. They were there for
In
like
and
a
out?
week. So one was there for a week, one was there for 6 weeks.
But if somebody were to come in and just use it?
Just for a day. In most cases, I probably wouldn't ask for insurance just because of the turnaround time. It usually takes at least a day.
Sure.
So if it's just a day use only, we probably just ask what they were doing.
So
and,
if in that situation where there was an incident that required some sort of insurance coverage, would you go back to the entity at that point, or does the city have a system set up so whatever insurance claims might come up would be handled?
That's a great way. We don't have anything for that kind of situation when someone just
Okay.
uses it for one day, but in most cases, that's not the case. If they're doing some sort of commercial operation, it's almost always more than one day. Now,
Okay. Just wondering.
yep. And just to differentiate, it's a commercial operator, but they're not offering services on the airport. They are doing work for someone off airport. Yeah. One thing just to mention, we are very aware of the categories that the FAA does protect. And so we're not going to unnecessarily exclude any licensed aircraft doing legal activity. We try to make every accommodation for that. It's only at what point that activity starts to put the airport at a possible increased liability. That's when we ask for a policy to protect us.
Dan, I have a follow-up question on the insurance. I don't
Sure.
want to belabor the point, but and maybe this is something where the ad hoc committee can weigh in a little bit further. But my understanding was that was one of the reasons that we were having the challenges that we were having before, was that there were insurance requirements that were being expected to be upheld that we're getting pushback on. Maybe I'm misremembering there, but I'm not sure that just because it's only a day that means they should be absolved of having the required insurance. So that was one of my 2 comments on the form, other than just that I think it's great that you got this put together so quickly. But I think having a place in that form where you could upload your certificate of insurance, or where you could just have that on file with the airport if you're going to be making multiple requests, I think that there should be a consistent requirement that's applied to everyone that has access to the airport, regardless of the duration of their use of the field.
Yeah, that's a great point. Right now, essentially the form is the first step, right? For some people, it's the only step. If you just need access for a day to fly your ultralight, so be it. For something else, for a commercial operator, like which was one of the options, that launches a series of emails that are going to go back and forth. So we don't have a process for that. We do have systems within the city to do that. We have a permitting system through the police department. We could set that up eventually, but at this point, I just want to bring up again, there is so little demand for this that we can't justify a system necessarily to address every single one of these.
No,
So that's where it's the kind of the first step.
No,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a fantastic first step.
Yeah.
My concern is that consistent requirements are being applied.
Yes,
It doesn't matter really why you're flying at the airport. You're still just as likely as anybody else potentially to have an incident, to take out another hangar, right? And especially in the case of it being an individual that may be doing this recreationally, we have no guarantee that they have the assets to cover a significant claim. So it could be a complete fool's errand for you or anyone else in the city to try to go after that individual, even if you had all their information. So I know this is an evolutionary process,
Yeah.
but I think consistency in requirements and having a means where, you know, I don't know what website developer you're using, but you should be able to have a form that's also just like upload certificate of insurance, right? And just take care of that in the request with zero additional effort for you long term. So I just think that as we continue to mature this, having consistent requirements regardless of the duration of your use is something that we should consider.
absolutely.
And another much more minor point on the form, I was messing around with the conditionals, and that's great. I couldn't get the company name to turn off, which for
Yes.
some of our users may be an issue. So if they can just put NA in it, that's fine, and try to fill it out. But we may want to look at that logic for the
If it's commercial, though, there has to be an LLC or.
No, I know,
or-
but for like if I just want to bring my own private airplane onto
Oh,
the field,
it
it
didn't
didn't
turn
turn
off.
off
Oh, thank you.
company name. So
Excellent.
I would have just put NA had I been doing it, but it might
Thank
be
you,
something.
thank you for the QC.
Yeah, no,
That's
minor,
perfect.
very
Yes.
minor. But no, this is fantastic. This is a fantastic step. I really
No,
appreciate
it's
it.
just a first, yeah, absolutely. It's a first step. I would just say that there is a big difference between predicted activity and non-predictive activity. So just to be clear, we're not limiting flight of registered aircraft. So those requirements are going to be very different. We're going to approach those very differently than someone who is just looking for access.
Yeah.
With that, we reserve the right to refuse service to a non-licensed aircraft. We've written it into Title 16. I'm hoping we don't have to get to that point. I am a fan of making things as accessible as possible. I'd like it to remain that way. Were we to have security or safety issues with one individual or several individuals, we might change that. We might just shut that off. And we can do that. I don't want to do it unless I have a reason to, because I'm going to have to give a reason. And we need a reason before we do that. At this time, I don't have one. Everybody's been great. People have been obeying the rules. I haven't had any complaints about any non-licensed aircraft. So until there's a problem, I think it's good to try to make it as open as possible. However, we do reserve the right, if at some point it becomes a liability issue, absolutely.
As long as it's not already too late by the time it becomes a liability issue. Just something to
Sure.
think. I'm not trying to give you a ton more
Sure.
work, but I'm just trying to be cautious.
Agreed. Any other questions about that? I know I just kind of tried to summarize it in the manager report they published, kind of why we had some of the limits, the categories, and then where it's located on the website. Any questions about that form or access before we move on?
I guess I do, getting into the 2 days
Yep.
for the non-licensed. In thinking, so I understand where you're saying that if you're asking for days and weeks and weeks and weeks, you're no longer a temporary but a permanent user. And I understand where you're going, but maybe that's something that we need to define instead of saying, only 2 days. That if you're requesting more than X days per month or in a calendar year, whatever we want to call it, as opposed to limiting just the specific days, that at that point that it clicks in and you become no longer, it becomes temporary. This is a permanent, your requests then become permanent, because then it looks a little, just on the surface, just a little discriminatory just towards that. And I know that's not the intent. But I'm thinking if we define, and I understand why you're doing it, but I think if we, instead of we limiting them, saying you can only have 2 days. If we say, greater than 15 days, whatever it is, 15 days per month, or 15, so 100 and, I'm trying to do math real fast, 180, whatever, 180 calendar days per year becomes a permanent request, and requirements are different. This is for temporary use at a rate less than X per month. And that way, we're not limiting it per week and looking at the broader picture.
Yeah, we reserve the right to change it, and we may have to. But so example of kind of the flexibility is we got a request for 3 days. They were all together. It was basically a weekend starting Friday, Saturday, Sunday. No problem. Sunday's the first day of the week. That's 1 week. Friday, Saturday, that's the other week. Perfect. Great. So far they only have 3 requests for the whole month. They're within the parameters. Perfect. Every single request, other than one individual, has always been within these 2 days.
Okay.
Never had one more. So I guess that's the thing, is we can fix that when we get to it. But at this time, I think we're meeting the demand. I get a lot of thanks via email that no one gets to see. We get gratitude. We get cooperation. And the requests have been, like I said, we may get 1 request per month, or I went back and looked, we hadn't got one from one of the individuals for 3 months. So it's not a regular thing. If somebody wants to try to abuse the system, then we'll deal with that on a one-on-one basis.
Well, you talk somebody who's abusing the system, and that's why if you define what the limits are and when it becomes from a casual user, if you will, to a permanent, and then obviously different rules and regulations that apply as a permanent. And I guess the other question, so if I submit a request today, or let's say it was within the 2 business days to use it for Saturday and Sunday, do those, then when can I submit the request for, say, I want Monday as well? Can that be in a separate request at the same time, or?
Yeah, we haven't put restrictions on that. I would say just put a form in. Just send a form in, and we'd be happy to do it in advance. I haven't any trouble doing it 30 days in advance, as long as it meets those same parameters.
Okay.
So I think we're flexible on that point. Obviously, we'll have to add. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. We can always add more requirements in the future. Try to make it as simple as possible without having to make a whole policy document.
Yeah, well, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Less is more. But the other part is I'm also trying to be realistic, and I don't know who gets the email when the form is submitted, whether it's going to you or Claudia gets it. But to limit, again, if it gets popular, and just to limit the number of emails. Just thinking of you guys, protecting you.
Yeah, at this time, it's not a heavy workload.
Okay.
And if we came to that point, sure.
Okay.
But yeah, the manager makes the final decision on it. But I can say that across the last year, we've made all access decisions equally, without prejudice. We're not favoring anyone. If we send out a response and we get the same request again, we sometimes will send a second saying, read the first email. If we keep getting barraged with the same request, we're not going to respond. We do not have time to respond to people who are not working within the system. By and large, everybody works with the system. It works great. Everybody's happy.
I think this is a great start because there's now some defined parameters, which kind of takes you out of the equation to an extent. It depersonalizes everything, which is great. So I'm really pleased with that from that perspective as well. And there's the procedure that people can look at and see what it is. Maybe we got to tweak it a little bit, as we talked about. So Jeff and I will probably get back together.
I credit the commission for that request that came directly from the commission for a process or policy, and we met that. And I think it's great.
When I got you copied me on the email, and I saw it, I was impressed and very pleased with what you did.
Good.
I commend you for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say the same. I mean, that's exactly what we were looking for, just take the ambiguity out of it. And it's not just for this, but like what we talked about, just any guests, right? I mean, it's for Banner Tow, for all the other things that were mentioned. So it covers a whole wide variety of things, which is good. But I would also echo Marcus's comments on that as well, that, the temporary nature of it, whether if it's 2 days a week, that's, potentially 8 days a month versus say someone that wanted to do 4 days in 1 week, is there a difference in temporary nature? So I think, I definitely would be in favor of a little more flexibility there if someone wanted, like you said, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the ability to, request more after that. If we need to define when something becomes permanent versus temporary, that's a whole separate issue. But yeah, I would just like to see some flexibility there and see how it goes. And we have a whole month to go through this process now. So if anybody wants to bring any comments forward to the next meeting after we have a month or a month and a half, it's already been up for about a week or so.
Yeah.
Then to bring them forward.
Moving on to just the projects, we were pretty much considering like I mentioned, the aircraft parking apron rehabilitation is complete. The final documents will be provided to council for final payment to the contractor. We will update. We did finalize agreement for design services for both Taxiway Alpha and Taxi Lane Bravo, and so we will be moving forward with the design for both of those to make those shovel ready. Probably within the next 12 months. Right now, we're trying to get both of those taxiway projects done in fiscal year 2026 is the goal. Update on 18C, the door is down. If you hadn't already heard through the grapevine, we're very happy with that. It helps us weatherize that broken door. So even though we still need to replace the door is down. It is secure. It is safe, and it's going to keep out the water until we can put another door up. The current tenant of that hangar is okay with that. Everything they need to do, they can get through the other door, the pedestrian door for that hangar. And in the meantime, they're using 18B temporarily to move any other aircraft or large parts that they need. So that tenant is happy. As soon as that door is replaced, we would take over 18B, get that into contract, hopefully with a commercial operator or maybe an aircraft, we'll see. But there is a couple of interested parties that would like 18B. With some of the changes in the rates and charges, the last two contracts, we charge 50% above standard non-commercial rate. So if it's a $1,000 hangar, it's going to be a $1,500 hangar for commercial rate. So that's what we've done with the last two contracts for the last two of those that are in contract under a commercial rate, and we would hopefully do that with another company if there is a company ready to go at that time. If not, we're open to aircraft or anything else that use of that hangar, but we do have two parties that are interested in taking it over at this time. We have looked into a restroom for 18B. It does not currently have one. There might be some options for prefab or other things, but it's very difficult to build and or install a ADA accessible restroom, no matter the size. So that remains a challenge. We're working with the building department on this California Building Code rules, but that's something we would like to get in that hangar, a permitted restroom. Let's see. I think that's about it. We kind of covered all the other project items. I don't have any other project updates. Any questions about projects?
Yeah, one thing, I know we talked about this in the past, the city was working on updating the standing contract for Meat Hunt. I'm just wondering, do you have an update on where we are with that status?
At this time, it looks like the city would not like to have a master contract, but contract each item separately.
Okay.
There's a lot of reasons for that. So we probably won't see that kind of on-call. We will try to get a consulting contract so that we can address the smaller things,
Right.
Such as the annual review, the ASIP review that we do with the FAA, a lot of those documents, and all of our grant applications are produced by our consultant. They're very good at it. As you can see by the grants we've been able to acquire, we'd like to continue to do that, but it'd be a much smaller contract,
Right.
very focused. Each of the design contracts would be their own contract. And then things like the hangar feasibility study would be a completely separate contract. We're still working on how we get that one done.
Okay.
But yes, that is the intent moving
Do you
forward.
have a sense of when that might be ready to put into place and use?
I don't. We were very successful with the design for the Alpha Bravo. But I don't, there might be some limitations to some of these. So we'll kind of take them one by one. I will say it took a lot of time to get that one going. So we're gonna keep chugging forward, but yeah. Probably separate contracts for each of those things.
Undoubtedly,
Yeah.
and that would make sense.
Yeah.
Are they aware that we have an interest in looking at possible future projects?
Yes, they've, as far as the hangar, they've already given us a proposal. So we have the proposal, and that can be attached to a agreement as long as we can.
Okay,
There are no legal limitations to doing that. Yeah.
okay, so we'll just keep working at that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, if there's any last questions, comments from any of the commissioners?
I have one sort of a mini announcement. Petaluma Area Pilots Association, PAPA, will be having our last display day event of the year on October 21st. Last month, we had a little over 150 people visit. We had a food truck that was there that went over very well. The restaurant, Two Niner Diner, is back open. That drew a lot of people. A great event, so anyone in the public want to come out and get up close to an actual airplane will be available to do that. And it's amazing when we had a group associated with the Petaluma Mothers Club come out the month before, we had 500 some people. And to see the little kiddos with moms and dads or grandparents oohing and awing, it is just the most delightful thing to be involved with. And so if you haven't been out to the airport, and it's amazing when we meet and greet the visitors that come on the airport to see the display, the vast majority, at least 70%, had never been to one of our displays before. Some people came and when we introduced ourselves, didn't even know we had an airport. I don't know if that's good or bad, but okay. First time to the airport in most cases, and they saw the signs we had up, and they wanted to check it out. And I don't think anyone went away not smiling and having had a good time. So anyone in the public, you want to come out and get up close to an airplane and, an airplane driver, that'd be cool. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. And so, yeah, please come to display day. And with that, it is now 7:15, and I will adjourn the October 5th Airport Commission meeting.